So welcome to the Chiropractic Wealth Summit. And what I want to share with you is the strategies that I used to retire at age 33. And I looked at a lot of different investments and how things work, and I pretty much found that these are the 9 strategies that's the easiest way to get ahead and create financial security and freedom in your life. And ultimately, that's what we're about. You know, your job. So many times chiropractors just focus on their being a chiropractor as opposed to what's the real purpose of a job. It's not for the job itself. The real purpose of the job is to provide a living and a quality of life. And so many people get removed from that concept because they go to school to be a chiropractor, so they get real narrow-minded and think, well, I just have to be a chiropractor and I got to practice all my life. No, you own a business. You don't have to practice at all. If you know how to run your business, you can leverage it off, work part-time, not at all, and you can keep building that business. And that's what we do. So that's what I did. So I had 2 full-time associate doctors, and then I had ended up opening 77 offices in 20 states. And so that is exactly what we're going to be teaching here with the Chiropractic Wealth Summit. So let me go into some of these key concepts right now, okay? Here's 9 categories, and let me just touch on a couple examples here for just a second, all right? What's the very first thing you can do to increase your wealth? And really, when we talk about increasing your wealth, what are we really talking about increasing your wealth for? To create freedom, to create security and freedom. That's the reason we're talking about wealth, okay? So what's the very first thing you can do to increase? What's the easiest thing to do to increase your wealth the fastest? Your knowledge and skill level. Let me give you an example. When we look at a practice, exchanging your time for money, because remember, 85% of the millionaires became millionaires by leveraging time, not by practicing. 14% of the millionaires became millionaires by leveraging money, not by practicing. 1% of the population became millionaires by exchanging their time for money. In other words, working, going into work. And I tell you, when I heard that statistic, that really was a paradigm shift for me, and it really made me look into what I needed to do to leverage time and money, because I knew there was a 99% chance I wasn't going to be a millionaire by just being a chiropractor. And I knew that also. I remember in one of the semesters in chiropractic college, one of the instructors came in and he said, and I'll never forget this, he said, you can make a good income being a chiropractor, but you won't get wealthy unless you know how to invest. And I remember that. And he's exactly right. Because what I found is people can do well, but most people will live up to that lifestyle. They'll buy the big house, all the SUV cars, and they won't have much disposable income at all, and they won't invest in themselves. So they're living a good life, but then they're also stuck in it. They got to make the regular payments, and so that gets to be an issue. But the 4 categories of exchanging your time for money in a business is new business. These are the 4 categories: is new business, that's marketing, patient retention, your fees, and overhead. All of those are profit centers. And there's rules and guidelines that you can maximize each one of those to maximize your time for money. Most small business owners, including chiropractors, never learn those. Never learn it. I don't know if you know it, but only 9% of small business owners make a 6-figure income. Most people think that if you're a small business owner, you're making all kinds of money. No, 9% make a 6-figure income. So most people don't do well. And I don't know if you've seen some of the statistics in chiropractic. The statistics are going down. They just came out like a year or 2 ago. Now, they rated the profession as one of the top 10 professions. Guess what the average income was? $87,000. $87,000. Well, there's a lot of other things you can do in life and make more money than $87,000, okay? And unfortunately, I see that. I see so many chiropractors out there seeing 60 visits a week, 80 visits a week. They're not even maximizing half their potential. I see it all the time. So the very first thing to do to increase your wealth is your practice. Invest in yourself. Increase your knowledge and skill level. Here's why. Let me give you a real quick example. As an example, typically when I work with clients to increase their business, we work with all four of those categories, but we'll start with patient retention. And 92% of my clients that do my patient retention increase their business over $100,000 in 90 days. You've done it, right? You've increased your business over $100,000, right? Just with patient retention, right? You haven't done patient retention. You have. You definitely have. You have. You have. And you have. All my clients in here, my consulting clients, have increased their business over $100,000 in 90 days just from patient education. Now, let's compare that to what kind of investment you would have to do. So if you wanted $100,000 in the bank, right? How much money would you have had to made, or if you wanted to put in the bank, how much money would you have had to make as a chiropractor to have that $100,000 in the bank? $400,000. You'd had to make $400,000 at a 50% overhead. The national average for overhead is 50 to 70%. 50 to 70%. So 400 to give you 200, 200 to give you 100. Now that's just in the bank. Now remember, if I know the skill level of patient education, I can make that $100,000. That's like they'll make $100,000 more a year because their skill level changed. Their knowledge and their skill level changed. So that's $100,000 a year, not one time $100,000. How much money would you have to have earned to have in the bank to make $100,000 a year? How much? A lot. Well, let's see. If you made $8 million, 50% taxes would be $100,000. So $100,000 a year would be 200. Would be, or no, I'm talking about money in the bank that you get interest off that money. Okay. Well, if you make $8 million, 50% tax overhead to get $4 million, 50% taxes to have $2 million. 5% interest rate, right? 50,000. So you'd have to make what? $16 million. You would have to make $16 million at an overhead of 50% to have $8 million, at taxes to have $4 million, at a 5% interest rate. Does that sound right? Are those numbers right?
That's 200,000.
200,000. Okay, so then it's $8 million, right? 8 million, okay. So you would have to have made $8 million at 50% overhead to have $4 million, 50% taxes to have $2 million, to get a 5% interest rate on a conservative investment. In other words, you know it's going to be there. Can you even get a 5% return on your investment right now with conservative investments? No. No, you got to go into riskier stuff. Conservative right now, you can get about 2.5%. So if it's 2.5%, you do need to make $16 million. You see that? So what am I trying to point out here? He is going to be able to make $100,000 a year, every year, the rest of his life, because his knowledge and skill change with patient education. He's going to be able to do it. Now the bad news, it's limited to him. He has to exchange his time for money to do it. But the good news is, he can now increase his income $100,000 like he did, as opposed to having to work to get $8 million, to have $4 million after overhead, $2 million in the bank at 5% interest rate. What's the likelihood, and how long is it going to take for you to make $8 million in your practice? Now remember, that's 100% of the money going aside too. That's none of that paying for your mortgage or any of your payments or anything else. That's just what we call disposable income. So you'd had to make more to pay for your lifestyle along that whole way, right? So this was a major concept for me. When I learned this concept, I thought, wow, the very first thing to do to increase your income, the quickest and the most, is to maximize your knowledge and your skill. That's the first thing to do. And most chiropractors never maximize their potential in their office. I personally have found that the average chiropractor can see about 200 visits a week emotionally, physically, without being wore out at the end of every day. Well, I used to see 100 patient visits a day and it was miserable. It I couldn't sustain that. Physically, you couldn't sustain it. I was just talking to a chiropractor yesterday. Got out of chiropractic after 20 years. He was seeing 300 visits a week because he was physically just killing himself. He was having all kinds of problems. 5 chiropractors that I know that I started practice with, all 5 of them don't practice anymore for one reason. You know why? Health problem. Wrist and back problems. Wrist and back problems. Chiropractors don't understand. You know, you're changing yourself every time you're bending over patients and you're putting your wrist in extension and all these things. You're creating that deformity in yourself. And so anyway, back to the concept, the practice. That's number one. You investing in yourself. So that's the easiest way to increase your income the fastest. So that's patient education. And then once you know educational sales, now you can access the market and get way more patients than you physically can handle. Okay, so that's how you maximize your money in your office for yourself and have a highly profitable business. Versus how much money you'd have to have made for it to go in the bank for you to have $100,000 a year. So the first thing you always do is invest in yourself. That's why. It's much easier. But guess what most people will do? They'll think they can invest in something else to make them rich. That's what they think. They don't think it's them. What's the national average of patient visits in chiropractic? Do you guys know? Last I saw was 105 visits. 105 visits a week. That's half the potential. Do you know how much money chiropractors lose by not even... the analogy that I give, it's just like an airplane or a hotel. When you are not maximizing your potential in that office every day, and like I said, I found it's about 200 visits a week, you know, about 180 to 220 is what I found, depending on, you know, your style and all kinds of, but I found emotionally, physically, and that's somebody who knows what they're doing, who knows how to keep patients, who knows how to get patients, in other words, has the ability, the knowledge, okay? Most chiropractors don't have the ability, they don't have the knowledge and the skill. So, 200 visits, and most chiropractors are seeing 80, 120 visits a week, right? So they're going through that whole week, half full. Half full. So how much money is that chiropractor losing? By not maximizing his potential in his office that day. It's just like an airplane that takes off half full. Or it's just like a hotel room that's half full overnight. It just lost a tremendous amount of revenue. See, these were concepts I knew. This was on my mind, you know. And so many chiropractors are seeing like 80, 100 visits a week. They're not even maximizing their potential, and they're playing on Facebook. I'm like, you're kidding me. You know how much it's costing you to play on Facebook? Hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars over your lifetime. Millions. So that's the very first concept. Second concept, we're talking about wealth creation, financial security, is buy your home. Buy your home. I found that the number one reason people do not get wealthy has nothing to do with income. Let me say that again. The number one reason people do not get wealthy has nothing to do with income. It has to do with lack of discipline. You can take anybody who makes $45,000 a year, take a little bit of money and put it aside with a minimum interest rate, and 30 years later they'll have $1 million. It's lack of discipline. It's not income. And everybody thinks it's money. It's not. When people get money, they don't invest it. They typically spend it on what's called depreciating liabilities. And then what's worse is now it's a monthly payment depreciating liability. That's what's taught in the American lifestyle. That's not what I did. I'm always looking for appreciating assets. Appreciating assets. Tax deductible appreciating assets. The average consumer buys taxable depreciating liabilities. Those three categories will determine your wealth, if you're continuing to get wealth, or if you're going broke. How are you buying? Is it taxable or not taxable? Is it appreciating or depreciating? And is it a monthly payment? and is there a monthly payment. Here's what I want. I try to do everything I can where it's tax deductible, appreciating, and it's appreciating every month. And there's certain categories that fits into. And you got to just, that's what we're here to talk about too, is how to shift your mentality to get away from taxable depreciating liabilities and go into non-taxable appreciating assets that increase your asset every month, as opposed to credit cards that you have to pay every month, depreciating liability. That's the worst scenario. That's the difference. That is the total difference between wealth creation and stagnation, is those three things. Taxable, not taxable, appreciating or depreciating, monthly payment or monthly increase in your asset. Those are the three categories right there. And every time I buy something, that's what I'm looking at. I'm looking at those three categories. Okay? Now, home, that's why when most people die, the only money they have is in their home, because it's called forced equity. It overcame discipline. That's why. So it's the lack of discipline. See, that's why I'm always so focused on discipline issues when it comes to wealth. Number two is, well, you already are going to pay your home. Might as well make it your own. And then that equity start building, because it overcomes lack of discipline. That's why. What's the third one? What's the next thing that you always have to do if you're a chiropractor? You got an office. I talked to some chiropractors, and they've been in practice 20 years, renting. Guess how much money they just lost in 20 years? Guess who just gained that money? The landlord. Guess who should be the landlord? You. Sometimes I'm like, whoa, you've been renting for 20 years? Are you kidding me? A lot of times that's $500,000 right there. That's $500,000 asset right there. So that's the next thing to do, is get in your own office as fast as you can. Now again, we teach how to do owner financing to make it easy. Because if you don't know owner financing and you go into commercial real estate, you got to put a third down. You got to have good credit, and you got to put a third down, and most people don't have it. So we're going to talk about how to do that, how to do owner financing. And the best type of office to have is you have your office and have 2 other units, a minimum of 2 other units. So now those 2 other units are paying the mortgage. You're not even paying the mortgage. You're free. Your rent's free. And it overcomes what? Lack of discipline. You've got to pay it anyway. Every month you've got to pay that. Instead of it going into rent, it should just go into your equity. Okay? So, look what's happening to our wealth if we know the 4 categories of how to exchange time for money. We just started maximizing it here. What's happening here every month? We're putting money in our pocket here, right? What's happening here if we buy our office? Putting money in our pocket. What's happening to our wealth here? Now let's compare that to somebody who doesn't know patient education, doesn't know educational sales, seeing 60, 80 visits a week, maybe 100, something like that, right? And so he spends up to that lifestyle, and then he's renting his home and he's renting his office. What does that person have 5 years later? What does that person have 10 years later? Nothing. And if you took both of those people, somebody that was seeing 100 visits a week here and they didn't live past their lifestyle, and they bought their home and they bought their office, what's the difference in these two people? And both of them were seeing 100 visits a week. What's going to be the difference in their net worth 5, 10 years later? That's why it's not about money. Getting wealthy is not about money. It's about discipline. There's some big categories to comprehend. One is discipline. So one of the things that I do is I kind of do forced discipline. It's called forced discipline. And then I pay attention to ratios. I pay attention to those 3 categories that I just talked about with you: taxable, non-tax deductible, appreciating, depreciating, monthly either payments or assets. I pay attention to those in every purchase I make, or I don't make it. That's why I was able to retire at age 33. Only practiced 7 years, full time. Net worth went over $1 million when I was 33, multimillionaire at age 35, because of these things I'm telling you right now. These were the concepts that I not only learned, I applied. Some of them scared the hell out of me, to be honest with you. Like when I learned only 1% of millionaires become millionaires, exchanging time for money, in other words, being a chiropractor, that scared the hell out of me. By the way, that's why 97% of doctors can't retire on the same lifestyle at age 65. That's why. Next one is the IRA, your retirement account. Why is that so? That's, by the way, the order that I'm sharing them with you right now is the order to do them. That's the order to do them. Next one's the IRA. Why is that so important? What's your biggest expense in life? Your taxes are your biggest expense. You have over 50%, if you don't realize it yet, you have over 50% in taxes. Federal, city, state, county. You add up all your taxes, you're paying about 52, 53%. Okay? So you got to know some strategies. You got to know some tax strategies, because every time you buy something, it is not $50. Every time you buy something, it's $100. You got the dinner and you have a nice dinner with somebody, right? It's $100. That is not $100. How much did it really cost you? $300. $300. You think that dinner cost $100. That dinner cost you $300 as a self-employed chiropractor. See, when I heard stuff like that, that scared the hell out of me. I'm like, whoa, what did he just say? I started paying attention to that. Why? Well, why did it cost $300, not $100? You had to make $300 at a 50% overhead to have $150. The dinner cost $100. You're in a 50% tax bracket. You had to pay another $50, but you didn't pay it right when you paid the dinner. You paid it in quarterly taxes. You had to pay $300 for that $100 dinner, and you wonder why you don't have any money. So the IRA, because that's a certain amount of money, you don't have to pay any taxes on at all. So that's why that is so important. Here's what's the bad news about that. If discipline is the number one problem, how many people have an IRA? Most don't. Most don't. That's the problem. So because I know discipline is the problem, what will I suggest with the IRA? Automatic withdrawal. You got to set it up on automatic withdrawal, because you will not do it. You will not do it. And even if you don't max it out, now obviously you want to max it out, but even if you don't max it out, do something. Put 5% in, 10% in. Do something in an automatic withdrawal. That's that much amount of taxes you're not going to have. And we're going to show you some strategies here of how to invest that money, how to invest your IRA into 100% tax-free investments, like real estate. You're going to, before this day is over with, you're going to be turned on to like one of the greatest investments, legal investments. I say it all the time. I said, man, there's the only thing better than buying real estate in a retirement account, but it's not legal. It's amazing. You're going to see when we go through all this. It is absolutely amazing. Real estate alone is amazing. But now when you throw it into your retirement account and it's 100% tax-free, it is phenomenal. I call it investing on steroids. So, IRA, what's the next one? This is the order to wealth. These are the strategies that I used. The associate doctor. How much sense does it make? And here's when it registered to me. When did I learn most of this stuff? Through pleasurable experiences? No. Painful experiences. I still remember the single day I lost $250,000 in the stock market. One day. I sat there and I looked, I thought, what the hell am I doing? I'm sending my money to a financial guy who's sending my money to a business that he doesn't know anything about. I don't know anything about that business. It's called mutual funds and stocks. That's what most people put their money in their retirement account. I said, I don't know anything about that $250,000 that I just lost. I don't know anything about that business and those businesses, mutual funds. And this financial advisor I used, he doesn't know anything about those businesses. I said, this is crazy. I have absolutely no control or knowledge over this. And here's what happened. One of my strategies for wealth creation as a chiropractor, what I was going to do in the beginning is I was going to have my office, because I knew you could do okay, but you couldn't create wealth. And then I was going to have one other office, okay? That was my strategy. Then from that money, I was going to invest in franchises, successful franchises like McDonald's, things like that. So I went out and studied all kinds of franchises to see which franchise. And then what I was going to do is buy one, and then from the profit buy two, and then profit buy three. I was going to just go into franchises. That's how I was going to create wealth. Okay? So here's what happened. I'm going to all the franchisees, and we're talking numbers. I don't know if you guys know it, but the average McDonald's profit's 18%. At that time, 20 years ago, it cost $720,000 to invest in a McDonald's. And it was only 18% profit. You had 36 18-year-olds running around. Okay? And I would share with them my numbers. Well, you know, chiropractic numbers are pretty good. I had a 70% profit margin. I mean, we can start an office, you know, now we can start an office for $20,000. Easily 50, but now, you know, when you know what you're doing, it's $20,000, we can start an office. So the capital was only $20,000, not $750. And we had a 70% profit margin. And every time I said that to the franchisees, guess what they said? They freaked out. They're like, man, I wish I could do that. They're like, I wish. And they would say, why don't you just do what you do? And I didn't listen. I didn't listen. Until about the fifth time, the guy said, you know, the fifth guy said, why don't you do what you do? And I thought, well, that just kind of makes sense. I'm already doing it. I already know how to do it. I can control it. It's a very low investment, right? I'm like, man, yeah. That's how I went to, instead of McDonald's, that's how I opened offices. That's how I went to the offices. So the next easiest money you'll ever make is the associate doctor. We're going to go into that. Just wait. You know, it's like everything. Can you buy bad gold? You know, every time you say anything, you say something to real estate, people go, oh, I had a bad experience. Oh, I had an associate doctor. Oh, I had a bad experience. Well, guess what? 50% of the people had a bad experience with marriage. The bottom line is, anything good is bad if you don't know it. You can buy bad gold. People think, oh, gold. No, you can buy bad gold. If you don't know what you're doing, you can buy bad diamonds. You see? So it's not a blanket statement. If you're ignorant, in all likelihood, you're going to buy bad, whatever that good category is. You're going to buy bad. So you do have to educate yourself in how to buy good gold, good diamonds, good real estate, right? So the associate doctor is, you can control it, you know it. It's the easiest, I say it all the time, it's the easiest money you'll ever make, because remember, how much does it cost? Well, it only costs as much until you break even. Well, if we pay associate doctor, let's say $3,000 a month, because we'll put the incentive on the production. We're not just going to hand over wads of cash, right? No, we just want to pay just enough to pay his living expenses and put his upside into production, motivation. Okay, so they don't just get fat and lazy, and then it's all on us. Well, that's guaranteed not to work. So, and then we know how to train them. We know the material. We know how to train them. All that. So, how much money do we have to make before he breaks even at $3,000? Because remember, over $3,000, does it cost you anything anymore? No. Well, how many visits do you need to break even from an associate doctor? At a $50 per visit, 13. 13 visits, that associate doctor has broken even, no more expenses for you at all. And I'm sitting here wondering why all of you don't have associate doctors. Because you know how easy it is to see 13 visits a week? Another one of my clients, because we'll teach clients how to hire and train associate doctors, because it's tremendous leverage of money and time. And by the way, we give our associate doctors the best deal. Our associate doctors get great deals. That's how we do it. So I just talked to a client a couple days ago. Just hired his first associate doctor. He did real well, joined me, he was seeing I think 60 visits a week, increased his business, and increased his business $500,000 in less than a year. So now he's hiring the associate doctor because now he knows the systems. He knows how to get patients, he knows how to keep them. Now it's into leverage, time, and money. Now it's replication. Okay, so he's maxed out this category. But remember, that's the lowest form of income. That's the least likelihood of you getting wealthy. That's only 1% of the population getting wealthy, that category. And it's the worst type of money. It's called earned income. It's taxed the highest. You're limited in what you can do because it's only you, and it's taxed the highest. It's the worst form of money to make, earned income. So he goes to his first associate doctor. We interview him, train, all that. How quickly did that associate doctor break even? He got 2 new patients in the first 2 weeks. He's already over 13 visits a week in 2 weeks. 3 weeks. He's been there, I think, 3 weeks. 3rd week, he's already paid for himself. That fast. From here out, it's... Now, how much money... 80 visits a week, I say this all the time. 80 visits a week at a $50 per visit. If you split it 50-50 with an associate doctor, because remember, if that associate doctor went out on his own, he'd have 50% overhead and he'd have a lot more headaches than just being in your office. Okay? He'd have to raise the capital, he'd have to have the risk, he'd have to manage the staff, he'd have to do the marketing, he'd have to do a lot of things that he doesn't have to do an associate doctor, but get the same amount of money or more. So we make it very worthwhile for our associate doctors. So 80 visits a week, $50 a visit, that's little over $100,000 a year. Again, how much money would you have had to made to get $100,000 in a year from a source, like a mutual fund or stocks or bonds? $8 million. 50% overhead, $4 million, 50% in taxes, $2 million, 5% interest rate. What did it cost me versus you? It cost you $8 million. How long is it going to take for you to do it? You won't. Here's the answer. You won't. That's the real answer. How long did it take me? 2 months. 2 months. He's broken even 3 months. We're at 80 visits a week or more. 3 months. 3 months. How much did it cost me? $3,000, $6,000, $9,000. If it was 3 months, it's $3,000 a month. They break even. And it's not even going to be $3,000 because they're going to be doing some production in there somewhere. $6,000 to $9,000. So it cost me $6,000 to $9,000 to make that same 6-figure income that you have to make $8 million on your own. These are some of the strategies and why I was able to retire at age 33. Next one. Oh, by the way, associate doctor, you start getting freedom. Easy source of passive income. You can control it. You can manage it. And now you have freedom. Now you can take vacations and still make money because your office stays open. You guys already know there's hardly a vacation you can take that costs more than you shutting your office down to take the vacation. And that is another reason why chiropractors don't take vacations. A friend of mine didn't take a week off for 10 years. I didn't take a week off for 2 years. When did I finally take a week off? Actually, our town was snowed in. shut down our town. We had 18 inches of snow one time, and it just totally shut down. UPS shut down, everything shut down. Yeah. After that, 2 years. Took me 2 years before I took off. 2 years. Freedom. It gives you freedom. You can work part-time. Now I have clients who don't work at all. Now they just have associate doctors and they manage their business. It's called a skill. It's a knowledge and it's a skill level. It's not an accident. So, next one's real estate. Real estate's the big one. Why? You'll see why, but here's the 6 reasons why. Number one, leverage. I can pick up a piece of real estate for nothing. I bought several homes with no money at all. Cash flowing good homes for no money at all. I'll show you the average money you'll spend is about $3,000 to pick up a $100,000, $200,000 asset. I'll show you exactly how that works. So it doesn't cost you much to control a huge asset. Well, there's not many investments that do that. Equity, every month people are paying into my real estate. If I'm scuba diving, they're putting money into my equity. If I'm on vacation in Europe, they're putting money into my equity. Okay? Leverage, equity, appreciation. You don't buy it unless it appreciates. It's called demand real estate. Unless it has the highest potential for appreciation. And by the way, that's the least of the 6 reasons you'll buy real estate. The least, not the first. When you hear people say, oh yeah, I invest in real estate, this area has got great appreciation, guess what I know immediately? He's not a real estate investor, he's a speculator. Next, depreciation. Well, you can take the purchase price of that real estate and you can deduct it over 27 and a half years. I mean, you take a $150,000 home, you might take $5,000 a year. You go, well, what's that really mean? Well, that's $5,000 you didn't have to pay tax earned income on. Right? I've got a friend. So you take 5 homes, 5, 10, 15, take 5 homes, you depreciate 5 homes, generally speaking, you just depreciated $100,000. That's $100,000 of earned income you don't have to pay taxes on from 5 homes. Okay? I got a friend that he retired in chiropractic. Why? Because he invested in real estate. So he retired early. He got a divorce and lost half everything. What was the good news? He had enough real estate that he still made after giving half of it away, he still made a 6-figure income from the real estate that he did invest in. What saved him? Real estate saved him. And he didn't even know what he was doing. He didn't even know, what we know now and the strategies that we use now. Strategies you're going to learn. He doesn't pay any taxes. He makes a 6-figure income and legally does not pay any taxes because the money he does get from real estate is capital gains and his depreciations wipe out paying taxes on all his capital gains. He makes a 6-figure income, no taxes. He's retired. He works part-time. It's leverage of time and money. That's called quality of life, by the way. It's called quality of life. And that's what everything's about. It's not about chiropractic if you haven't figured it out yet. It's about quality of life. I once put out a post on Facebook, and it was something about how to retire, some of these strategies. And I get an email from one of the chiropractic nut jobs, the tick chiropractors. He says, I'm a chiropractor. Why would I want to retire? Nut job. Nut job. Yeah. Go ahead and have something happen to you. Go ahead and have something happen to you and see how you feel about chiropractic. You'll care about your health and your family more than you will about chiropractic. Those are the 6 reasons. Leverage, equity, appreciation, depreciation, cash flow. You don't buy it unless it cash flows, and it's capital gains. So you're taxed less. That's why 70% of the millionaires get rich on real estate. Tax strategies. And then, of course, what we want to do is we want to buy the real estate in the IRA. Now it's 100% tax-free. You got high leverage, cost a little bit of money, high leverage, control a cash flowing asset, and it's tax-free. These are all the strategies that I use to retire at age 33. Do you know how many people retire at age 33? Not many. Not many. We're going to go into the tax strategies. Remember, I shared with you that when I say tax strategies, what am I talking about? Well, it's real easy to turn your ledger over to the accountant and him deduct that from your income. That's easy. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about now he gives you your earned income. And now you got to pay taxes on that earned income. That's the income I'm talking about. And I'll just share with you, I found, just from experience, as much as 80% of that earned income can be tax deductible if you knew these tax strategies. We're going to cover those. Asset protection. 50% of the millionaires go broke, become millionaires again. You're looking at one of them. When did I learn asset protection? After I lost millions. That's when I learned it. And I had 2 accountants and 2 lawyers, and I still lost millions. Because they didn't know. They weren't millionaires. So we'll go into the basics of asset protection. The last one of the 9 Weallth strategies, I'll tell you, it's charity. It's charity. Charity is very empowering. It's for a lot of reasons. You should always reinvest into something that you care a lot about. That's self-actualization. Doesn't matter what it is, how small it is. Always give something, it makes you feel good. It'll make you better at what you do if you know that part of what you're doing is to help that. It'll help something, hopefully, that needs to be helped. If you're not doing any type of charity in your life, I would suggest that you get a charity. And that's why one of the things I teach in my consulting is we like to start a foundation for your office. And pick a cause. In my office, I picked abused women and children. That was the cause of that was my charitable cause that I helped support. It does a lot for you, especially when you tie it to what your income. So it's kind of, you're kind of using it for greed purposes, but it helps. I don't know if that makes sense. So I want to use the charity because it makes me feel good, and I'm going to tie it to my business because it helps my business in all kinds of ways. And it helps me focus more on my business because I know a part of that business is going to go to that charity, which I care a lot about. And by the way, that's what you always want to do, is make sure it's a charity that you always care a lot about. So it really ties a lot of things together. You know, one of the proudest moments in my life was when I donated over $500,000 back to chiropractic. You know, and one time I handed a check for $200,000 back to my school. And that's one of the proudest moments of my life, is I was able to do that. These are the 9 Weallth strategies. These are some of the basic concepts. This is what we go into with the Chiropractic Wealth Summit.